My interest kind of died off a little bit, but I eventually got back into it, in as much as just having it up for white noise whenever I would do work. Honestly, most of my gaming up until just a few years ago was a board game called Go.
That's interesting. So you play that online and stuff?
That's right.
Oh wow, okay. So that's a big difference kind of gaming, yeah. So
yeah,
then
a little bit different.
Yeah. So then you jump on the Twitch train. So what kind of made you decide to present your gaming to the public?
Oh gosh. Okay, so a couple years ago, Undertale comes out, and it blows up online. And a few days after it comes out, I finally get suckered into playing it. And whenever I play games, I tend to turn something of an analytical eye to it. And I noticed a couple of patterns in the way that enemies were showing up. And so I was talking with a friend of mine, Mike, and I said, I'm gonna figure out what's going on with the RNG here, because there are some patterns that, they're interesting, but it makes me feel like the RNG is acting in a way that I don't expect. And he said, well, that's really cool. I'd love to watch you. Why don't you just, put it on Twitch? I'm sure it'll be super popular. Spoiler, it wasn't. I had one viewer the entire time. But so that made me start doing that. And then at the end of it, he said, now you kind of understand the internals of the game. You should just speedrun it.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So what kind of gave you the background to understand that, because I play a game like Undertale, oh, the enemies are there, they're doing their thing, cool. But you kind of saw more than that. So what kind of is your background that led to you kind of digging into it a little bit more?
I have a background in computing, which is, at this point, I think, kind of unsurprising for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I've done a decent amount of analysis of PRNGs and such in the past. And I just noticed that I had a higher tendency to get into an encounter right after a screen transition than after an encounter. Once I had an encounter, it took me longer to get one. Usually I could get through entire rooms after the first one and not have to worry. And that seemed odd. It seemed like the distribution of encounters was unfairly weighted towards the screen transitions, and ultimately I would have shown that on the stream when I was doing the reversing.
So how do you go into learning about, okay, so let's say for some reason I noticed that same thing. I don't know what to do if I know it, right? But so what did you do to get into that? Is that you're digging into the code of the game?
Yeah, at the very base level, yeah, I opened it up in what's called a debugger, which lets me look at what's going on in the memory of the game. And from there, I found the spot where the random numbers were being generated. And I found the spots that would change whenever a random number was pulled for an encounter. And after that, I noticed that there was a step counter that got reset, and that there was a bias towards having that encounter occur, like I said, right after a screen transition.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that kind of stuff's so interesting for me. I love hearing about that stuff. So is that kind of knowledge, after you learn that knowledge, is there anything you could do with it to put it into the speedrun of the game?
So one of the things that you'll notice if you watch any of the Genocide, or now it's glitchless neutral. Before I quit playing Undertale, it was just neutral. Mm-hmm. But you'll find that triggering a screen transition and then hunting for an encounter immediately is something that you tend to see. And that's not just my work, but there are a bunch of people who were working on it. But that was the work of all of us figuring out this is how we can most efficiently get encounters, since in Undertale you need to kill a certain number of creatures in each area before you can move on for those routes.
Yeah, wow. So then how about when you play, so you play other games, you're always now kind of seeing that kind of analytical side of things and trying to find those kind of little Easter eggs, not Easter eggs is the right word, little kind of interesting things about them?
Yeah, patterns. Absolutely. So I'm going to be showing off Wonderboy at AGDQ. And one of the things that got me really digging into the game was after I had first gotten into it, I started noticing that I could, reliably get the same pattern of things to happen, which led me to look back to the original. And I found a task by somebody that I absolutely have to give a ton of credit to, the 8-Bit Beast, who's just a fantastic tasser. And from there, he had completely disassembled and documented the original PRNG. And so I used his notes, even though enemy placements were different in the new one. Based on his work, I was able to create an RNG manipulation route through the speedrun.
Wow, okay. So that's pretty cool. So you really attack the game in a cool way. So I guess I want to jump into the GDQ stuff, because you do have a run coming up. Wonderboy, like you said. So it's not an extremely well-known game, I think. I mean, people have heard of it. You know, it's around. It's not a really niche game, but
I think in Europe it's a lot more well-known.
I cause for some reason, when I was a child, I knew of this game and I played it before. I don't know how that happened, but yeah. So it's never been a GDQ before. It's kind of a positive, I think. But how did you feel when you saw it get in? Were you surprised?
I was a little bit surprised. I thought that it was my strongest submission. I had also done some Shantae and, stuff like that. But I thought that this is the run that if one of my runs gets in, this is probably the one that's going to get in. Just because of the amount of work, the length of the game. It's not a super long run. And the fact that, like you said, it hadn't been in a GDQ previously. On top of that, I'm going to get to have developer commentary, which is never a minus. And to the best of my knowledge, it's going to be the first time that the developer is going to be on the couch.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I was going to ask, because those kind of take a little extra planning, right? Because I know, you want to talk about what's going on in the game, then developers there. Are you going to practice that at all? How are you going to work with that kind of, dynamic? Yeah,
we're going to be meeting up so that we can figure out what all we want to say. Especially for the first 10 minutes or so of the run. The RNG manipulation is really important that I get it right at that point. So that's going to give Sebastian, who's the developer, plenty of time to talk about it.
Yeah. So, what do you think after the run you can say, okay, we accomplished this, so I think it was a successful run. Is there any kind of elements you want to make sure you include in your run?
There's not really anything that's super optional in the run. Nailing the RNG manipulation is important. If I end the run and I had 2 boomerang drops really early on, which is what I'm manipulating for, then I know that I've done really the important stuff. Other than that, we're going to be showing off a couple of neat glitches in the game. We're going to be showing off a couple of Easter eggs. Those are going to be fun. Other than that, as long as if I get a 27 or better, the world record route is a low 26. But we're doing a marathon route. The world record route, I finish a run somewhere between 5 and 10% of the time. Okay. The marathon route, I'm finishing 100%. I just, it'll be underestimate. It's just a question of, will I be more than a minute and a half underestimate? That's what I really want to shoot for.
Cool. So we know what to look for because if people are listening live, the GDQ is so close. Do you know if you hit the RNG early, or is it kind of like you will find out later if you got it correct?
I know every step of the way whether or not I'm on the RNG manipulation route. There's a couple of things, if I fall off of it, that I can do to fix it if I get off of it in the right way. So there's, right up from the very first drops, there's a fireball that we should see drop in the second room. There's 3 coins that I want to see drop from a boss, and it goes on and on and on, all the way through about 18 or 19 minutes into the run. And then after that, things stop being as important.
That's going to be a tough balance because you can't say all those things like, oh, he did that. Oh, he did that. But you got to say enough so the viewers kind of know what they're looking for too, right? That's going to be a tough balancing act for you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you doing these days to prepare? What is it like? You're almost less than 2 weeks away now. So are you just preparing as hard as you can here? What are you kind of doing to get ready?
So what I've been doing is I've been playing runs every day, which is not a huge surprise, but I've been trying not to obsess too much over the game. I find that if I get too deep into it, that's going to weigh way heavier on my mind than if I just, make sure that I'm practiced, that I'm, in good form, and then just make sure that I'm well rested on the day of.
You're kind of near the end of the run there. It's the end of the whole marathon there.
Yeah, it's going to be Friday morning.
Yeah, are you the kind of person that gets nervous, or what do you think about that time slot?
So I mentioned that I played Go.
Yeah.
I've done tournaments in the past, and I've gone very far in tournaments, so I'm used to dealing with nerves. So I'm relatively certain that I'm going to be okay. This will be my first time, doing a speed run in front of 100,000+ people. But given that I'm going to have a chance to really just focus on the gameplay itself, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be all right.
Yeah. So then, like you said, there'll be 100,000 people watching. You are a Twitch streamer. And from what I know of you, I don't think Twitch is definitely not something you want to do for a real job or anything like that. So, but do you see this as a kind of promotional opportunity for your Twitch channel?
Not for my Twitch channel so much. If I have more people hang out as a result of it, that's super cool. Honestly, what I want to use it as is a chance to show off the game. I think that a lot more people are going to be interested in the game after they, see a speedrun of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. That's a good way to look at it too. What are your kind of goals in speedrunning? Because again, my shortest time of following you and watching your streams, you don't seem like a person that's motivated by world record